Hi there, Ramon here from Memories, and today we have...
Hi there, everybody. I'm Neens. I'm from Rants and Big Pants, and I'm here in just outside of London in the UK.
Super exciting. We love chatting with people from all over the world, so thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell me a little bit more about Rants and Big Pants. That's such a... I'd love to hear more about it. That's such an iconic name for sure.
Okay, so a random name, yeah. So we wanted to create a space. It's myself and two other friends. One's in her 60s, one's in her 50s, and I'm just coming to the end of my 40s. And we wanted to kind of create a positive space where people could just be themselves, have no expectations. Let's be honest, we look at Instagram and we see all these wonderful photos, but we can't always look like that. So we talk about anything and everything. In the UK, we have a program called Loose Women, which is a television program where women just come on and they talk about anything and everything. We're kind of like the online version of that. So we feel that if anybody's got anything that they can bring to the channel that's going to be, beneficial to anybody watching, then welcome aboard.
That's awesome. I love that message about just being your authentic self and not really caring what anyone has to say.
Yeah.
That's so great. And I think we definitely need more of that in the world. I'd love to hear about how this is connected to Alzheimer's, because I know that's something that you're also super involved in.
Yeah, okay. So my father has had... Well, he's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's now for 7 years, but 5 years prior to that, so 12 years in total. He was diagnosed with memory impairment, so we knew where it was going to lead to. So I've always been there for my dad, always helped. My mum and dad split up in the 80s. My mum remarried to a wonderful man, and my dad didn't ever remarry. He was a bit of a lad, so he got a boat and he out on his yacht and sail around and whatnot and just love life. So it was a bit like a sledgehammer when we realised that he did have memory impairment. But I finally noticed at my wedding where I noticed that his memory was going. But at my wedding, where he'd had a few drinks, it had made the illness worse, or his memory worse, and he repeated the speech, and everybody was laughing at the wedding going, oh, you've repeated it, what's the punchline? And so I just kind of got up and said, oh Dad, you've repeated your speech, and made a bit of a joke of it. And so literally about 4 days after that, I said to Dad, look, we need to do something about your memory. So 12 years ago, like I say, memory impairment, 7 years ago, Alzheimer's, and I managed to keep him in his own home for 12 years with the help of technology. There is so much out there that people don't know about. So I started Rants and Big Pants probably about 18 months ago now. And I just happened to put Dad on there one day. I think it was maybe we were out together and I just said, oh Dad, say hello to everybody on the television. And he was like, television? And because obviously it's easier for him to understand when I'm on a phone. And it was like, yeah, we can talk to people in the world now, blah, blah, blah. And I just explained to people that Dad had has Alzheimer's, and people just loved him. He had a real character about him, and he still has a real character about him, even though he has lost so much of his, his brain capacity, if you like, his memory capacity. But he's never lost his sense of humour, and I think people just fell in love with it. So I decided to start up talking about Alzheimer's a lot more on the channel.
That's amazing. I love how it just turned from something to, really support women and put a positive message out there to something that's really now supporting your father and women with Alzheimer's, and also yourself, because you're getting to share that aspect of yourself. And I also love how you touched on how this came to be. That's a really almost dramatic introduction to the thought of memory impairment, at your wedding. That's such a pivotal time in your life.
Yeah. So that was the real poignant moment that I realised, there were little things along the way, and I thought, I'm sure there's something not right here. But at the wedding, I just thought, no, this isn't right. So yeah, it was a massive moment, really.
I guess, what was that time 12 years ago as a newlywed, and also finding out that your father is suffering from memory impairment. What was that like emotionally for you as a daughter?
You know, it's really interesting. I get asked a lot about the emotions and how I'm feeling with it, because you'll see on the channel, you know, I do talk an awful lot about it. It's one of the questions I get asked a lot. And I found it harder in the earlier days than I do now. And I think because at the start, you hear this word Alzheimer's, you know what's going to happen. We see it once we start to research it. So I think at the start, the early days, I grieved a lot more then than I do now. So emotionally, I think it really tore me apart because Dad and I have always had a really close relationship. So now, although it's still really hard, I've come to terms with it, and I came to terms with it a long time ago.
For sure. And I think that's a totally natural response. As you said, like you and your dad have a very close relationship, and to see him in this way is really challenging. And I think it's amazing that you've been able to grow and kind of follow that journey of acceptance. I'd love to ask you about any advice you would have to caregivers who are maybe still in those early stages and struggling to accept in those beginning grieving processes. What would you say to them to not make it for them?
Yeah, I think, you know, you hear that word Alzheimer's, it's a bit like, you know, we hear such a lot nowadays, the cancer word, you know, and it affects so many people. Sadly, this seems to be happening with Alzheimer's. So you hear that word and you know what the inevitable is, you know, and sadly, there is no cure. You know, with cancer, we can cure some people and some people we can't, but with Alzheimer's, there is sadly no cure. So we obviously think the worst. And I think, you know, you need to do your research, but you also need to understand that every single case is different. And understand that, you know, what maybe works for one person, you'll probably try that, but that doesn't necessarily work for you. Do not be disheartened emotionally because you need to try something else, because it's how much that person's brain power is depleting. And some people can go downhill in 3 years. Some people, my dad, it's been 12 years. So everybody's journey is different.
For sure, for sure. And I think that's something that we really are passionate about here at Memories, is that we want to showcase diverse caregiving experiences, because people who are suffering from memory impairment, the people who are looking after them, they're all different. There's no one-size-fits-all model. You all have your own background, your own stories, your own situations. And we want to showcase that on our platform. So thank you so much.
And you know, good for you as well, showcasing that, because I think people talk about Alzheimer's, but they don't necessarily touch on how different each one is. And everyone's journey is going to be different.
For sure. For sure. I love that. I guess now that we're talking about the diversity in the journey of taking care of someone with memory impairment, you have a platform where you interact with a lot of people who may not have the same level of exposure to Alzheimer's and dementia as you do. So, oh my goodness, sorry.
Go for it. Have some water.
So sorry, where did that come from? Okay, I was going to say, have you encountered any misconceptions that people have about what it's like to be a caregiver or what it's like to have Alzheimer's in your platform on Rents and Big Pants?
Sorry, just repeat that.
Have you encountered any common misconceptions that people have about caregiving or dementia on Rents and Big Pants?
No, to be fair, I think because I tend to give out quite a positive story, because there's so much doom and gloom around Alzheimer's, and I will tap into all of Dad's interests, but in such a fun way. To be fair, almost in a childlike way, to make it easier for them. And I think that, again, is another important message when, you know, time comes and their memory does get a lot less. You know, it's almost like you go back to treating them like a child. They say there's a point in your life where the child becomes the parent, and it's so true with Alzheimer's. So no, I think, you know, I tend to put a lot of fun stuff on with Dad and I, and people are generally they're quite happy to take my lead on the products that I'm using. No, everyone's really quite positive.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy that you've had that level of acceptance.
Yeah, I have.
Um,
Yeah, and I think as well, because it kind of kicked off a lot more because I was talking about it on the BBC and on Sky News. It's a long story, but yeah, so they kind of got in touch, and so we spoke about it there. So I think people, when we're talking about Alzheimer's on the news, I think people at that time were crying out maybe for a little bit of help. And I think as well, and I don't mean this in any way derogatory or to patronize anybody, but my dad is 76. He doesn't have another partner. Had he had another partner who was in her 70s, mid 70s, chances are she may not have been as technical, savvy. So maybe wouldn't have looked at what I had personally looked at. So I've had to step up really and look at the best things to keep my dad independent, because there is nobody else in the family. It is just myself. So I was able to research so much stuff. I looked into cameras that we set up in his own home. We started with one camera. And then we progressed to 5 cameras. So it may have been, it was like, I'd talk to him on one camera. He could talk back to me. And I would say, Dad, okay, look, it's 9:30 now. You need to go to bed. So I'd talk him through turning off the television, switching off the lights, getting him up to bed. And I'd even, in the end, I had one installed in his bedroom, just to make sure that, he was waking up in the mornings, and he did at one time have quite a nasty fall, and we managed to find him on the floor, call the ambulance, and get him into hospital. And that was literally about 4 weeks before he was taken into a care home. So the technology is amazing that you can put in place to keep people safe and well. And you have to remember, we had those cameras installed in his home for about 8 years. We started off with one, and as he got worse, we added more all around the house. So, to the point where we actually caught his next door but one neighbour stealing from him, which was a bit of an eye-opener. I know, yeah, quite a lot of money. She'd go around and say, oh, can I borrow money? And of course, she didn't realise that we had the camera in when we did. So I was able to take that evidence to the police.
That's, wow.
Oh, I know, but people prey on people, vulnerable people like this. If bad people do get wind of it, they will take advantage, trust me. And how long that was going on for before, I have no idea. It could have been a matter of weeks. It could have been a matter of years. Who knows? It's bad though, isn't it? Yeah.
It's so shocking that people would take advantage of someone who...
Oh, I know. But I think in the end, she was so humiliated that she eventually moved on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I love the point you touched on earlier about eventually the child becoming the parent in the relationship. And it would be great if you could chat a bit about how you have grown as a person as a result of being a caregiver or solely responsible for someone with memory impairment for more than a decade. How have you grown in change?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It happens very, very gradually. I don't think I appreciated how much pressure was on my shoulders really until I put Dad in a care home in January. And after I put him in the care home, I felt this incredible weight that had been lifted, because obviously over the 12 years, it's been very small, gradual steps. And you take each part of that on board. So, maybe checking that, that he's not hemorrhaging his money, checking that his health and welfare is okay, checking that his dentist appointments, that he's getting there or that he's being taken there. And then in the end, we had carers going in, up to 3 times a day. But it's an awful lot of pressure. And there's an awful lot of guilt that comes with it as well. And I tell you now, having been through that and now put Dad in a home, please, 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 if you're listening or watching this and you're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's, the guilt, let it go. Let it go. You're doing the best that you can, and you may be comparing it to somebody that you've seen on television or that you've seen on a video on YouTube, you are doing the best that you can at this time. And you have to remember that, because I would think I should be doing more, I should be doing more. And I think so many people think that. You're doing what you can. And I've only really accepted that since putting Dad into the care home.
That's such a beautiful thing. And I think that's been a very common trend in a lot of our caregiver interviews, is this idea of an almost perfect caregiver, that you're going to be dedicating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single second of the day to care. But you have a life, you have a family, you have a job. It's not, you have various different, it's not feasible. And you need to look introspectively and just ask yourself, is this the best care I can be providing? And if it's yes, it doesn't matter what else is going on around you. Focus on you. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because caregiver guilt is such a real thing.
No, and it's so true. And I always think the golden rules for me were, you know, if they're cared, if they're safe and they're well and they're happy, you know, safe, well, happy. And once one of those is jeopardized, then I think it's time to put other things in place. So, you know, there would come a time where the first time Dad had to go into hospital, bringing him out, you know, was he safe? I'm not sure. You know, he's obviously wasn't as well as he had been, because he'd been into hospital. So I questioned two of those things. So I had to up his care when he was at home. So we did that. But then I decided it wasn't enough after he'd gone into hospital again. And that's when we brought him out of hospital and put him into a home, which I thought would be horrendous. Like, I was crying myself to sleep at night. I felt like I was doing him a disservice. Let me tell you, it's the best thing I've ever done, not just for me, but for him. He is safe, he is well, you know, and he's happy. He's in his own little world. He's content. And I thought it was going to be so much worse than it was. And I'm so pleased I did it. I kind of wish I'd have done it a little bit sooner, but it's that guilt, you know, that he never wanted to go into a home. He told me that when he was, you know, of a better, you know, brain capacity, but needs must. And like I say, he's content and he's happy. You know, I always say as well, just to give you, I always give this tip to people. I think if you're caring for somebody or you visit somebody with Alzheimer's, I always say, leave them with love or laughter. And I tell you why I say that, because they are in touch with their emotions. They may not remember what you say to them, but they remember how you made them feel. So if you leave them with either love or laughter, that's a great emotion that they've got. You're leaving them with, and hopefully they will run with that for the rest of the day. So I started volunteering in my dad's care home. So when coronavirus hit, they said that we went into lockdown 2 weeks earlier at the care home. And I said, look, I will volunteer. I will be a cleaner. I will do whatever. I've been 18 years working for Benefit Cosmetics head office in the United Kingdom. So I look after all the culture and communication. I was on furlough. And they said, look, you know, you're going to have to go through some tests and some interviews, etc. Anyway, long story short, did that. And I'm now volunteering 3 days a week until I go back to work full time. And I absolutely love it. I'm not working on Dad's unit. I'm working upstairs with other stages of Alzheimer's, but my reward at the end is to go and see Dad. So anyway, what I wanted to say, or the point I wanted to make, was the love and laughter. I will sit with Dad at the moment and I'll say, right, Dad, I'm going now, after maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. And he'll say, oh, no, don't go. And I'll say, oh, okay, no worries, I'll stay then. Now, I might stay for another 30 seconds, 15 minutes. But when next time I say, right, Dad, I'm going to go now, I'll go, all right, darling, yeah, love you, bye. Do you see what I mean? The difference in staying for that extra 30 seconds for a minute. I'm leaving him with love as opposed to that anxious feeling of, oh, don't go. And they won't remember. So always leave them with love or laughter. And if they don't want you to go in that moment, sit with them for an extra few minutes. Honestly, the difference it makes to them is incredible.
So many beautiful points you touched on. I love that.
Sorry, I went off on a tangent then, didn't I?
No, it was all so beautiful. I love this idea of them not being able to remember the words or the events, but them remember the emotion behind those. I think that's such an important thing. And I think especially because caregiving can be incredibly frustrating. It's a very hard role to do. And if you just kind of keep that at the forefront, I think it can make your caregiving experience, whoever's listening, much, much better. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I would love to
Yeah,
chat.
no, that's fine.
I would love to chat about this super active role you played in the place where your father is currently staying. If you were secondary
Oh,
care,
yeah.
you sent him to live there, and then COVID hit, and now you volunteer and you're active and you're there all the time. Please walk us through what that was like for you, what prompted you to make that decision, how it's been for you. We'd love to hear about that.
Okay, so in January, Dad moved into the home, and like I've explained, it went really well. It was a very smooth transition. However, COVID hit, and he had been in the home for a matter of 9 or 10 weeks. And I went to see him every single day because you just do if you can, and I actually changed my hours at work. So I was full-time, and I changed it to finish at 2:45, 3 days a week, because by the time I'd get to the home, I'd say to my husband, right, I'm just going to sit with Dad for half an hour or so. Well, I loved him and the other residents so much that I'd end up staying for about 3 hours. And I'd get him playing his guitar and everything to them as best that he could, and we'd sing and we'd do whatever. So I loved it. So anyway, then obviously coronavirus, COVID hit, and the manager of the care home said, look, we are going to go into lockdown now, which was, I think, the second week in March. Now, bear in mind, he'd moved in mid-January. So it was a case of, right, okay. And I said, so what does that mean? She said, well, at the moment, we're going to, close down for the next week. And I said, well, if you need a volunteer at the minute, I'll do anything. I'll cook, I'll clean. I can't cook, by the way. Can't really clean. But I said, I'll cook, I'll clean, I'll do whatever you need me to. I'll answer the phones on reception. I'll do some entertainment. I need to be able to see Dad, because as far as I was concerned, I'd moved him in January and I'd seen him every day. And I just didn't want him. I didn't know if he would feel afraid or feel worried. I just didn't know. So anyway, they said, okay, you need to go through tests, online tests. You need to have a couple of exams and a couple of interviews, beg your pardon. And we have something over here which is called a DBS check, which means that you have to be checked out by the government, that you've had no convictions, no criminal record or anything like that, which takes about 5 weeks. So after the interviews and the tests, the DBS check came back. It was 5 weeks. But within that 5 weeks, I had spoken to Dad probably every other day on Skype. So we were having calls. And I tell you what, an interesting point here as well. When I'd Skype him, he would be very vacant and very vague, because Skyping, like you and I are on a Zoom now, to him, that's totally, how can you talk to somebody and see someone? But if I was to phone him on a good old telephone, he was brilliant. Hello, Neen, miss you, how are you? So he would communicate so much better, because this is in his long-term memory, yeah? Whereas a screen with a picture of me talking, it's all new. It just doesn't comprehend. So I think that he was not, very good, and he couldn't keep up with it. So anyway, 5 weeks on, started working at the home as part of their leisure activities team. Now, for 12 years, I worked at a holiday camp called Butlins in the UK as a redcoat, so as a holiday entertainer. So I've got a lot of experience from doing things like that. So I'm upstairs working with Dad, working away from Dad, and then at the end of my shift, I go down and spend some time with Dad. But I'm working with all different stages of people with Alzheimer's. So it's amazing for me to see and get to know so many different people, how people tick, what people like, what people don't like. It's been absolutely incredible, and I'm learning so much from the home on how to treat these people as well, which will be an even better learning for me when Dad comes to the next stage. But the moment I surprised Dad with that I was working there, I'd done my shift, came down, and the carer said, "Don't worry, I'll go and get Dad for you. You hide behind his bed." So hid behind his bed. He walked in, and they were talking about where his guitar was, and I went, "Surprise!" And he went, "Oh, hello." But now to him, it could have been that he saw me 2 days ago. It could have been that he saw me 2 months ago. You know, who knows what was going on. But I personally couldn't not see him. And if I'm honest, through fear of him forgetting who I was. He may have done, he may not have done. Again, with this illness, you don't know how quick the decline is going to be. But I have definitely seen a decline in Dad in the last few months. Now, again, could be the illness, could be the fact that he's not getting out because they're not allowed to go anywhere. They've got to just stay in the care home. But I am loving my new role as a leisure activities coordinator in the care home.
That's amazing. I love this. I love how this separation inspired you to go out of your way to spend more time with him. I think that's a super beautiful thing that you're taking on, and you're being such a big help to not only him but so many other people in various different stages. And I have the utmost respect for what you're doing.
Yeah.
This coordinator.
Oh, thank you. You know what though? It's not just good for him. Honestly, if I'm honest, during coronavirus, if I would have been sitting at home twiddling my thumbs, that would not have been good for my well-being. So actually, what I've done, I come home, my heart is filled with joy, and I feel like I've done something good. And in seeing them smile, my God, they make me smile, seriously.
That's amazing. I would love to ask you just one last question about the number one piece of advice you would give to someone who's just been, sure.
Sorry, can you repeat that for me?
Sure. I said I would just love to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
What would be the number one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's just recently become a caregiver? Just recently become a carer. Do you know what? Again, leave them with love and laughter. Because every single person that I come into contact with Alzheimer's or dementia, every single one of them, I'll leave them with love or laughter, whether that's playing a song, whether that's telling them a joke. Actually, this is the top tip. If you tell them a joke and they laugh at it, don't be afraid to repeat that joke every time you see them. I tell my dad the same joke 4 times a week, and he rolls with laughter like he's never heard it before. I'll tell you the joke, actually. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea. What do you call? Oh, I have no idea. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea?
No idea. Yes.
Oh. Oh, that's clever, actually.
And what do you call a deer with no legs and no eyes?
No legs and no eyes.
So what do you call a deer with no legs and no eyes?
No leg-eye deer. No eye-leg deer.
Still no idea.
Wait. No. Oh.
No legs.
That actually is pretty clever. I might use that one. That's actually very clever.
Honestly, but just the first one, you know, I always tell him my joke. And if you go onto Instagram, we've got Alzheimer's 1 to Alzheimer's 8. So it starts from maybe a year and a half ago when Dad was at home, and it's gone all through the transition period of him being into a home. So if you've got a spare few days, then there is a lot of footage there if anybody wants to watch it. But I tell him this joke, the same joke, all the time, and he loves it. So love and laughter, leave them with love and laughter, and tell them the same joke, because that will leave them with laughter.
Well, and I think leaving our followers with love and laughter would be a great way to wrap up this interview. So thank you so much, Neens, for sitting down and chatting with us today, sharing your story, the story of your father. I think that's so amazing. I think a lot of people who are watching are really going to take a lot of value from your journey. If anyone wants to learn more about Rent and Big Pans, or you and your father's dementia journey, Alzheimer's journey, where can they find you?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you go on to Rants and Big Pants, predominantly on Facebook and of course Instagram is where all the stories are. And if you want any advice, I've used. I know we touched on the cameras, but I've used one-touch phones. I've had trackers on Dad. The poor fella couldn't go anywhere without us knowing where he was. If he wanted to go into hiding, he didn't have a chance. There is so much technology out there. Or if you just want to offload. I get so many people that message and, are crying as they're writing, saying, I'm so angry, this hideous disease, blah, blah, blah. Just do it. Honestly, please just do it. Use me as a sounding board or for any advice and just send us a message.
Well, there you go. Rants at Big Pants, Instagram and Facebook. Reach out to them for a laugh, for a share, for a cry, whatever you need, and they'll be there for you. Thank you again, Neens, for joining us. It was amazing chatting with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel really honoured to be, associated with a company that is promoting, Alzheimer's in a positive way. So thank you.
Amazing. So that's all for this week, and be sure to tune in next week for our next Caregiver Spotlight.